Checkpoint. So it is all yours, sir.
All right. Hey, guys, good afternoon, gals, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back from your lunch. You're in your food coma now. You went all the way down to your refrigerator. You got your lunch. You brought it back up. You ate it, whatever. It's just weird. You know, you have to wait. You didn't have to wait in line. You just went and got it. I'm going to take about 45 minutes to talk to you about something. But before that I do that, I'm sure you've seen this. Just ponder what you see on screen here for a second. What happens on January 1st of 2021? What happens when the ball drops? By the way, is the ball even dropping in Times Square? Anyway, something to think about. Anyway, I'm Brian Linder. You don't know me, but I'm going to tell you who I am. I'm with Checkpoint, and I'm part of a couple of things. One, I'm one of the security evangelists here. I focus on the secure remote worker experience, but I'm also a host of one of our podcasts, and I do a bunch of other things, and you may have seen me on television. I was on TV a few times on the Fox affiliate down there, but anyway, none of that's really that interesting. So what I'm going to actually do is talk to you actually about you and me and everyone, and here's the long and short of it is that we are all the weakest link, okay? You are, I am, I don't care if you're at the top of your game in cyber, I don't care if you're just starting out, doesn't matter what you are. We are the weakest link. So humans are the weakest link. I'm going to tell you a story about it. I'm going to interweave, and we're going to basically attack not only the weakest link being humans, but also what Corona has done to people like you and me, and what some of our research has seen. So today I'm representing not only Checkpoint as a company, but one particular arm of Checkpoint, and one of my roles in the company is to digest a massive amount of data that is produced by Checkpoint Research, which is at an arm's length from the product sales side of Checkpoint. So two different groups in the company. But Checkpoint Research puts out some great info and great reports, and I'm going to distill a few of them down in a couple of sound bites today as I talk to you about how humans are the weakest link. So thanks for joining. As an example, what we see, and this is actually jumped right out at me. By the way, this came off our blog, so blog.checkpoint.com, but the threat actors have joined in the race towards a coronavirus vaccine, which sounds literally ridiculous. But if you think about it, the trend in cyber, we're going to be recurring this for the next 45 minutes, which is we know what some of the usual vectors of attack are, but do we know how smart the threat actors have gotten in Corona time, and how they are going to prey on you and me and everybody to their own financial gain. So let's talk about how threat actors have joined in the race to a vaccine. You've probably seen some of these. When it comes to either approved vaccines or stimulus checks, or should I even touch the subject of elections and meme warfare, or any of the above, basically we see campaigns that are being targeted at email boxes like yours and mine, whether they be your personal email or your company email. And we call them mouse spam campaigns, all right? And this is when we see, in the wild, we see subject matter like, urgent information letter, new approved vaccine, or claim your stimulus check here. Now, right at this moment in the presentation, we're only 2 minutes in, you're still trying to digest your tuna sandwich, and you're saying, this could never happen to me. I would never get tricked into downloading something in an email title like that. But you'd be shocked to know that people, both smart and not smart, are doing it, including you and me and everybody, and we'll talk more about it. About 81% of breaches involve weak or stolen credentials. What does that mean? It means if we can get a hold of your credentials, we can make money off of them. And this is why they're such valuable real estate. So we're going to tell some stories today, all right? We're not going to do death by PowerPoint, even though, of course, it is a PowerPoint, so we have to have a PowerPoint or we're not even here, right? But we're going to tell a couple of stories. We're going to use some role playing and some actors in this story. So I hope you humor me. We see a major shift towards email as payload for malicious files. And when we are able to compromise email, we are able to have the big win. And as will recur, we will focus on things like phishing attacks, which are the easiest and most profitable way to begin the theft of credentials, and thus a business email compromise, usually, that can result in money and profitability for the bad actors. So we'll talk about that. All right, everybody on here knows what a phishing attack. Now, this is ridiculous. I do this sometimes in my presentations, and people laugh at it. I've actually done it on my podcast too. You're sitting at your computer like I am. You're in your office or your living room or your dining room, and your dog's sitting next to you, and your kids are, in virtual school or whatever. But raise your hand if you couldn't articulate what a phishing attack is. Just raise your hand sitting there, and then, watch your dog look up at you and stare at you ridiculously. So just to define it kind of quite specifically, of course, you know what it is. It's an email that comes your way, or in the case of through a text message, a smishing attack. but it's an attempt to trick you into giving your information up, okay, through email or by other means that would allow someone to use your credentials to take money or steal money, convince another person to transfer money to them in your name or on behalf of you. So this is a phishing attack, a smishing attack, which is done through mobile devices, which we'll look at in a minute. But you need to be kind of clear on that because it becomes the basis of our whole story. All right, here's another statistic that's a bit sobering. On average, a company with 1,000 employees, which is about mid-range for maybe on the smaller side for some of you, I'm not sure, but sees about 20 emails a day that get past basic security. We're going to focus a lot on Office 365, and I'm not calling them out. We could talk just as easily about G Suite from Google or a number of other platforms, but they all have some basic security built into them. But about 20 phishing emails a day on average, and we studied this, get past the basic security controls, all right? Everybody's got some basic security in place. So what I'm going to talk to you about is the odds of someone taking one of those 20 emails that get through and clicking on them. And all it takes, of course, is one person to click on it, and the ransomware attack can start or worse. So let's keep on going. All right, let's tell a story. First of all, let's give some role plays. Now, I have some great news. My bad actor is Corona compliant, as you'll see in a minute. So that's a teaser. And I'm assuming you're wearing a mask because clearly I don't want to be part of your immediate transmission area. So, and of course, I'm not wearing a mask. But guess what? Mr. Fish, who is my bad actor, who's going to be pursuing another poor fella, is actually wearing a mask, as you'll see. So that's very exciting, I'm sure. That made your day in Corona times. But this guy's called Mr. Fish, and he's going to try to steal somebody's account credentials. And let's see how hard he's going to work to do it. Now, this guy's name is Robert Hoffmeyer. He's a made-up guy. I hope he's actually a real person somewhere, but we've changed the name to protect the innocent. He's the vice president of strategy at a company called Hack Me Corporation. So he's a valuable target. Not only does he have a position of authority, but he may also have trade secrets and other key information. So he's a good target. And we're going to make an assumption that maybe he's not the most sophisticated user in the world. Let's see if we can put that to the test, all right? So this guy has a mission, Mr. Fish, the bad actor. He's going to break into his email, send an email as him. He's going to impersonate this guy, and he's going to try to get money transferred. Will he be successful? Well, we're going to see how many different ways this attempted compromise is going to happen, because what most people think of is, and I'll stop for 1 second here, what most people think of is one email through maybe Outlook or Office 365. But what I'm going to show you today is a story where this persistent bad actor has found many, many different ways in, and you're going to get to see it. And when I did this for the ISSA chapter in Raleigh, which was done, I think I did it over the summer, late in the summer, I think it was eye-opening in the sense that some people didn't realize, I think, how a persistent bad actor could attempt so many different vectors of attack. And I'll also show you ways to control it. So first thing this Mr. Fish is going to do is he's going to target this guy's Office 365 account. Now, this should be nothing you probably haven't seen before, but have you seen the Office 365 login page? Well, sure you have. It looks something like this, and maybe on a given day, like, for example, if there were a presidential election of the century that was happening next week, or if there was a second wave of Corona, maybe you'd be slightly distracted, so maybe you wouldn't be looking so close, for example. At this page, you would just be, waking up, getting your coffee. Here he's going to clone this page, okay? Not too hard to do. He's going to register a domain. Now, you guys are all savvy cyber security folks, so you immediately can smell what's wrong here, right? You see it. You smell it. You see what's happened here. So it's visible to the naked eye. He's going to search on the open internet for this guy's email address, which is trivial to do, whether it's on the open internet or the dark web. Finding that somebody's corporate email address is the simplest thing in the world to do. And he's going to craft what looks like a legitimate email, quote unquote. We'll dissect this. Let's see what about this email isn't legit to the naked eye, but also not to the naked eye. And that's probably the more important part of it, all right? So let's take a look here. First thing they did was the sender has some brand-related text in it, like this. See the 365 here, like Office 365? Okay, so you smell that. The email was sent to a senior recipient, so we know that this guy has a VP level. We know that this smells funny. It's going to a higher level person. We know certain language that appears consistently in these phishing attacks, like email security, please change your password, all those kind of keywords. we know the link inside that email is a low traffic website. Of course, you wouldn't know that by looking at it with the naked eye, but systematically we know that that is true. And also, there's many things about the body text that are quite suspicious. So maybe there's things you can see with the naked eye. Maybe there's things you can't see with the naked eye. Certainly, depending on someone, in all cases, to catch this with their naked eye is probably not the best strategy in the world. So let's start tabulating out all these things. Now, it turns out not only are the things that I pointed out are triggers for a phishing email, but guess what else? 300 more indicators, some of which will expose and some of which are indirect. So they're not also barely visible to the naked eye. Check Point maintains, and again, this is a neutral. I'm obviously representing Check Point, so I'll make reference to some things we do. But we maintain the largest threat prevention database on the planet. It's called Threat Cloud. It'll be the first time I'll mention it, and I'll mention it a few more times. The bottom line is we're applying intelligence across hundreds of indicators, not all of which, in fact, most of which, are not visible to the naked eye. So, point being, it requires more than even a sophisticated cybersecurity expert like you to understand whether or not this is a phishing attack. In our case, we determined that it was. So all's good. Okay, so we quarantine it and all's well, and it never makes it to the guy. It gets put in a quarantine area and everybody's happy. Now you think you're done. Now, let me take a break and show you something that should be very disturbing to you. So I'm programming you, right? I'm already setting expectations that this should be very disturbing to you. One of the common misconceptions about phishing attacks is that whatever website you're being redirected to is clearly a phishing website. You put your mouse over it, and if you're a little more sophisticated, you pick it up and you can say, wait a minute, that's a bogus website. Let me show you what our research unearthed about Qbot, which is one of their new attack methods, and how convincing they can be. We're going to talk first of all about how sophisticated not only the sender of the email can be, but also where the clicks go. Two different things that are really disturbing. First of all, here is a campaign that starts by stealing your archived email conversations. Now, you're probably thinking, I don't get it. What does that have to do with anything? Well, if I'm sending you a phishing email from some bogus email address that obviously is made up or crafted or has 365 in it, you're probably going to pick up on that. But what if that email came from someone you knew? Okay, so the attacker gets your email archives, pulls out legitimate people you've had conversations with in the past, and then impersonates them as the sender. So you appear to be getting emails from people that you actually have conversed with in the past. So the stolen emails are then utilized as the sender address, which makes it even harder to detect this as a phishing email. And that's an extremely evolved attack that, by the way, this technique is not new, but certainly something that is disturbing in terms of what we're seeing. All right, so anyway, back to this again. We've got our URL that is clearly a phishing domain. We have categorized it as such. We have reposited it in our threat intelligence database here as an indicator of compromise, and we blacklist it. All right, so that's all great. That's all fine and good. Now it becomes a known a phishing domain, and millions of people around the world then realize that benefit instantly. Instantly, whenever that's seen, it's blocked. Okay? All right, let's move on. There's the mask. There he is. He is Corona compliant. You clap now. You begin clapping. Nobody's clapping. David, not one person in their living room clapped, disappointingly. In any case, he's got his mask on, but he's starting to get a little frustrated. So he's going to get his back up. He says, I can't break this protection. Let's get a bit more creative. Let's see if somebody's chatting. Oh, look at that. I kicked right out here. Hang on a second. What happened there? Okay.
They said the word clap.
Oh, they said the word clap. Oh, I love it. That's ingenious. They didn't actually clap. They just said clap. Yeah, it was like a flop. Thank you, whoever did that.
They were probably clapping and you couldn't hear them.
That's what it was, because they're all muted. So we should open them all up and we can hear the two golf claps that were happening. Okay, let's move on. Now, this hacker with his mask on is getting his back up a little. He's deciding to target this VIP's personal email. So again, trivial task to go find his personal email address. But here's where it gets interesting, all right? We call this a 0-day domain. So he's going to go out and on a moment's notice, register a new domain that's not been seen before. So Whereas in the previous example, we knew the domain, it had been seen, we had seen it before, we blacklisted it. Now we've got a brand new email domain, a domain that's not been seen before. So he gets a personal email on his Gmail account now. Again, very convincing looking, right? Very convincing looking. He's prompted to click. And what happens? Well, when that email is passed through, let's say in this case a gateway that happens to be linked up to our threat cloud. It could be, again, if you want to make it generic, it could be any, but in our case, it's a checkpoint gateway. We pass that URL up to our threat prevention intelligence database, and something happens. What happens? We don't know about it. Okay? So what happens? Well, the naked eye couldn't process that. Now, you might look at it and say, yeah, I see that's clearly a phishing domain, but it's not so clear always, right? So we don't know about it. But what we do is we look at it and we say, wait a minute. This particular domain was registered by a known bad actor in the same week with similar elements as a known phishing domain. That is a good example of how complicated and complex it can be to take a domain name and try to classify it with your naked eye. In this case, we apply some heuristics to it. We say, wait a minute, that can't be right. That's a phishing domain too. And we blacklist it and we block the phishing attempt. Okay? So you see what happened there? We didn't know about the domain. We smelled it out. We said, wait a minute, that's been registered by a known bad actor. It happened rapidly and it has similar elements. That's a phishing domain too. So this guy is slowly getting irked. And he's becoming more and more committed. And plus, the mask is pissing him off just like it pisses you off. So now he's going to get even more committed. So now he's going to launch an unknown phishing website. All right. So he goes and registers a 0-day domain. All right. Now let's talk about the basis of a phishing attack. Let me explain it to you in basic terms, and then I'll show you again, based on our research, how this has evolved in a very disturbing way. Usually, we go out, we register a domain name like FISH365, and we register it, and we launch a campaign using that as a phishing website. So we build a malicious website behind it. You know, you already understood that. Let me talk to you about a technique that I have coined a term to call it laundering the phishing link. Laundering. Watch what happens. Now, pay close attention here. The phishing email contains a link to a legitimate domain like Samsung.ca. In this case, the bad actors have compromised servers, web servers in Samsung's web space, okay? So somehow they've gotten a hold of legitimate Samsung pages and just enough to lay a redirect on those legit pages so that when the phishing email appears in your mailbox, it appears to be coming from a legitimate Samsung domain. So maybe it gets through certain protections. Maybe it doesn't get caught by the 300 heuristics. Maybe, okay? And as soon as that user clicks the link, they are then landing on this redirect, and that launders them over to a legitimate malware domain, and then ultimately downloading a phishing kit. So you see what happened there? They took the bad domain here and they laundered it in the Samsung space so that the first landing page was actually clean or legit. At that point, they are then redirected into the full phishing attack. So my point is that the bad actors are quite sophisticated. So we need to have a different way of treating this in general. I'm going to show you what that is. All right. So clicks on this and gets redirected, and look what happened here. He made it all the way to the phishing website. So the fancy threat intelligence didn't catch it. 300 heuristics, AI, nothing. It didn't catch it. So you end up here. Now what? Now what do we do? Well, now we're going to treat this a bit differently. We're going to look at the elements in the web page. We're going to scan them, pass them up to the threat cloud. We're going to look at those fields and look for telltale signs that they are part of a phishing campaign. This website itself, the elements on this website. So we couldn't classify the domain name, but we are actually going to classify it based on elements we see on the site itself. And once that happens, we actually generate a verdict and say, wait a minute, this is a phishing site. We're going to stop it. So basically, you're welcome. You're welcome. And Robert Hoffmeyer never had a chance to type his credentials in. He was blocked before he ever did it, to which you say, you're welcome. Okay? So we blocked it that way. So that's as an example of a 0-day phishing site. Much more difficult problem. This guy's heart rate is zipping higher and higher. He's getting more and more irked as the session goes on here, and what are we in? We're 19 minutes in, so now he's starting to break a sweat. Still has got his mask on. He's not giving up at all. Now, how many people, okay, again, raise your hand. You're all familiar with, have your Android device or you have your Apple device. I'm sure that 100% of you either have one or the other, okay? And you probably use iMessage, all right? So it's just the Apple, iMessage. But does anybody use WhatsApp, which is one of the most popular messaging platforms on the planet? By the way, what I'm talking about now could be applied to iMessage or you name it. It doesn't matter. And we're going to talk about something called a smishing attack. And then we're going to get into the realm of mobile and how dangerous your mobile device is, even though you don't even realize it. First thing I'm going to do is go on the dark web and find the guy's mobile number. It's a trivial exercise to do it. I could probably find it in Google. If not, I'll go on the dark web and find his phone number. And then I'm going to send him something that looks like this. Now, pretty easy to impersonate somebody and send him a link like this. And more than likely, he gets it on his phone, and I don't care who you are, more than likely there's a 50% chance you're clicking this link. All right. Now, in this case, the link itself is a redirect, and let's pretend that in this case it's a redirect to a known categorized malware or phishing site, in which case we can just simply block it. Okay, so that's a trivial example. In the case I just showed you, it could be in the case where we've never seen this domain before. He clicks it, and what happens? He gets the page, looks legit, right? Looks legit, but we catch it because we scan both of those elements. They fail the tests, and we block it as a phishing site. So the point being that mobile has got to be one of the biggest blind spots we face. We often forget about it. We often ignore it. So you come see me at Checkpoint, and I'll talk to you about solutions like Sandblast Mobile, which protect against these things. That's what you're seeing here. But my basic point is they're usually a blind spot, mainly because most enterprises don't want to be involved with touching employees' devices. They hear bring your own device, and they don't want to be involved with securing it, even though they forget or even though they might remember that those same bring your own device mobile devices are being used to access their company's resources. So could be a very, very serious exposure. So we look at the mobile device the same as a laptop. There's no difference to us here at Checkpoint. And this is an example of the same kind of blocking you would see on a laptop. Now, let me tell you about something that happened, and let me and in a second, of course, his pulse rate is through the roof, and we're going to see how even more committed he's going to get with SpongeBob SquarePants in a second. But let's come back to that. Let me tell you about something that happened about 2.5 months ago, and we've actually been working with Qualcomm for months on this. By the way, this is all stuff you can read about on research.checkpoint.com. It's not a product pitch. It's our research website. But let me tell you what happened, all right? Let me tell you a story about mobile devices. We discovered in working with Qualcomm, we discovered 400 vulnerabilities on a chipset that Qualcomm manufactures. Now, if you're not sure what Qualcomm's role is in the world, I'll tell you. They manufacture chipsets, and they're very profitable, and they're ever present in many, many mobile devices. But in this case, I'm talking about Android devices like Samsung and the Google devices and others, okay? By the way, let's give it a number. 40% of the world's devices are containing what I'm about to tell you. So 40% of the world's 40% of the world's mobile devices, which are all Android, contain the following system on a chip. And we found 400 vulnerabilities that affect this. So let me show you. System on a chip looks like this. It's a multi-function chipset. It's installed in the phone. It's not field replaceable. It's not upgradable. One doesn't download a new version of an operating system like iOS 14 or an Android version, and it doesn't overwrite the firmware on the system on the chip. The only way to program a Qualcomm system on chip is with a firmware burning process. So here's the sort of the bottom line. No one's ever going to get their Qualcomm system on chip in their Android device reprogrammed ever. It's never going to happen. So imagine 40% of all the mobile devices on the planet having this chipset in it and being exposed. This has actually happened, and this is what's going on. By the way, there's a genuine, or should I say, a common practice in cybersecurity, which you probably know about, which is when a company, not just Checkpoint, but any company, responsibly discloses a vulnerability, they also disclose the proof of concept for it to demonstrate how it would be done, and they work with the vendor. So we did work with Qualcomm. In this case, Checkpoint was asked not to disclose the proof of concept for fear that it would be exploited. That's how serious a vulnerability this was seen to be. So you should verify what I'm telling you on research.checkpoint.com. Don't take my word for it. Bottom line is, no reasonable way to remediate this problem except to replace the device, which no one's going to do. So you're not going to run out and replace your Android device because you heard from some checkpoint guy at a conference that the chipset in the system on chip was vulnerable. So this is why one needs to acknowledge and install and deploy a security system of some kind on the mobile devices like I just showed you. So this goes way beyond phishing. We can't fix the vulnerabilities, but we can block exploits of those vulnerabilities with security software on the mobile device. Okay, got it? Let's come back to the program. So this guy, Mr. Fish, how am I doing on time? Don't cut me off at the top, right? David, we have an agreement. We go all the way to the so is that right? So where am I? I'm at 55.
I can only make that mistake once a day.
No,
so
you're not going to make that mistake. You're forgiven for that. But it's 55, so we're good. We're good on time. Okay. Let me tell you what happened next. So our masked marauder, who's getting increasingly agitated, is going to reference something that you forgot about from a long time ago. First of all, you have breach fatigue. Anybody know what that is? Sit there for 2 seconds and ponder it while you're drinking your coffee. Breach fatigue is
similar to being fatigue of online webinars as well, right?
Yes, Zoom fatigue, pandemic fatigue, and data and breach fatigue are all the same thing. They're all exactly the same thing. We are sick of it. We don't want any more Zooms. We don't want any more data breaches, but yet we become numb to them. Numb, okay? So you became numb to data breaches years before you became numb to Zooms, but now that has also happened, and also years before you became numb to the pandemic, which is also happening. But you don't remember this. This is real, by the way. There were 100 million Quora. You know what Quora is, right? Questions or answers. It's a social media site that many frequent. And you forgot about this breach if you ever even knew it. It's from 2018, which is like 100 Corona years ago, right? So make a mental note. There was a disclosure of 100 million passwords from Quora, the website, stolen in a data breach that everybody has long forgotten about. Now, it turns out this guy, this fictitious guy, is on the social media just like you are. And instead of talking about his kids or whatever it is, he's answering questions about SpongeBob leading a happy life. And he's posting as himself, and of course talking about how SpongeBob lives in a pineapple and he's yellow with blue eyes and yada, yada, yada. So he's a happy guy. Great. So this is all seeming very meaningless and inconsequential till you realize what this bad actor is now going to go do. He's going to see whether this guy reused his corporate credentials in the real world. Now, I'm going to pick up my water in my Yeti. All right, it's a big Yeti. This is my Yeti right here. It's big. It's got to last me for hours. Let me ask you something. I'm going to raise my water and take a drink, but I want you to answer this in your head honestly. Have you ever reused your corporate password either directly or indirectly on a non-personal website? Because like everybody else in the world, you're trying to keep all your passwords straight. Maybe you use a vault of some kind, like an e-wallet or some other vault. Maybe you're using a code system in Excel, like I've seen some people do. Have you ever done it? I'm going to take a drink. You think about the answer for 1 second. By the way, the drink is not a scripted part of the presentation, even though it appeared to be. So the answer is people are doing it. And they're doing it, and they're doing a lot of it. And I'm going to search the dark, or should I say our bad actor is going to search the dark web for that. Remember, Quora had passwords stolen. Remember? He's going to go buy some passwords. He's going to go try to find this guy's Quora password, which probably hasn't been changed since the breach, because whoever does that, because you have breach fatigue, right? And going to see if he can reuse it as his corporate Office 365 password, for example, or his Gmail password in this case. So let me show you how this works if you have the savvy to get ahead of this. This is called protecting credentials. This is what happens. When the user, if you're ahead of this, when the user tries to set a password on the social media website that is using his corporate password, whether it be on a mobile device or whether a laptop, because both are protected by Checkpoint in this case, by agent or mobile, we can identify it. Now, first thing is, someone's cringing. Oh my God, wait a minute, Checkpoint is reading passwords. No. If you know how passwords work, they're all about hashes. So if I can hash the password that he used for the social media site, and if it happens to match the unique hash of his corporate password, I've got a red flag. Of course, I don't know the actual password, but I'm able to compare the hashes. My point being, if you have the forethought to be protecting against this in the first place, it would never happen. It wouldn't be allowed to happen. So we would stop the user, we would log the activity, and we would advise him to change his corporate password. Or for that matter, we would simply block the action. All right? So that's an example of the refined credentials. Now, here's another thing that can happen, and I call this the Spider-Man syndrome, okay? What happens when now I'm assuming now that your Office 365 environment, for example, is protected by CloudGuard SaaS, which is our API-based protection that protects Office 365 and G Suite. Well, when that hacker tries to log in, let's say, so somehow they've gotten those stolen credentials. When they try to log in, we stop them because we don't know what device they're coming from. Or for that matter, they're coming from a device in a country that's impossible. For example, he logged in, let's say Robert Hoffmeyer logged in from New York City, but 13 minutes later we saw a login from Vietnam. That would make no sense at all. So we can prevent account takeovers by applying business logic, some of which is available to the naked eye, some of which isn't, to stop that kind of behavior through a protection like CloudGuard SaaS. So we've got this guy from all angles. Time for a little review. This is where your math skills are going to come into play, okay? After the fancy animation finishes. Here it comes. Here we go. You've got a situation where I'm going to count. I want you to count across the top and down the side. So let's do it. 1, 2, 3, 4 across the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 down. So it's 24, but they're not all checked off. So let's call it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 13 vectors of it. I want you to think about this now. This is the distracted, secure remote worker, which is all of us in Corona time, okay? 13, wait, 1, 2, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 13 vectors of attack by even a reasonably savvy bad actor, not to mention a campaign, multiple campaigns across multiple countries where all these vectors are known and happening at the same time. And as people become more and more distracted, the 13 vectors become even easier to exploit as you become more interested in whether a particular president is going to get elected. Certainly, you're not going to be watching for a phishing attack probably in your email. And there's 13 of these vectors of attack for a single vulnerable, secure remote worker. So this comes back to kind of the summary of this, which is humans are the weakest link, okay? And when I say humans, I mean you, and I mean me, and I mean all of us. We all could use a safety net, and we need multiple controls far beyond any one point control. We need a unified set of controls to provide us all a safety net against these bad actors coming at us from all sides, all at once, in the most vulnerable times. In fact, so vulnerable that I'm not sure we can ever remember a time we were more vulnerable. That is it for me. I'm Brian Linder. Find me on the global podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, and every other Google platform, any of the podcast platforms. We do have some fun on the podcast like this and digest the checkpoint research as it comes up. So definitely, thank you for coming on. I know there's a lot of sessions, and thanks for choosing this one. And don't forget, you are the weakest link. Any questions or dialogue, or anybody want to disagree with me or have an argument, that'd be great.
I would love to hear arguments if that was possible. We got one comment that said, excellent info. Thank you, from Jason Warren. So just some quick housekeeping notes. Remind everybody to, by now, you should probably already know about the lounge and the vFair platform. Also, please remember that the comments and the surveys, every single one of them is read, so please complete them. That's the only way that we can learn from mistakes like I made earlier in track 2. Certainly probably not getting hired back next year. So
you'll be hired, Brian. David. Don't worry, buddy. You will be hired.
Brian, thank you very much. If there is no questions, though, I guess we will go ahead and terminate the session. So I'll give a few seconds to see if any slow typers have any questions. Nothing. Brian, excellent.
I'm glad it was a good session, guys. I wish you the best, and have a great rest of the day. It's a busy agenda. Make sure you get in as much as you can. And David, thanks for your help today. Have a great day, guys. No problem.
Thank you.